"Don't touch me!" the little boy screamed, yanking his arm away from Emma's hand, blood on his forehead, terror in his eyes, rain hammering down so hard she could barely hear him breathe. He was maybe 6 years old, alone, in a flooded alley at midnight. And in his shaking fist, he held a crumpled piece of paper like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Emma grabbed it before the storm could take it. 2 words. 1 phone number. Uncle Victor. Her blood went cold. If you're new here, please subscribe and follow this story all the way to the end, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story has traveled. The rain had been trying to drown New Orleans for 3 hours straight. Emma Carter pulled her jacket tighter and kept her head down as she pushed through the narrow side street behind Magnolia Diner, the same street she walked every night after her closing shift. Her shoes were already soaked through. Her tips had been $11. $11 for 6 hours of carrying plates and smiling at people who didn't look at her face. She didn't let herself think about the eviction notice sitting on her kitchen table. She didn't let herself think about the electric bill or the second job interview she'd missed because her car wouldn't start. She just walked, 1 foot, then the other. That was all she could afford to do. She was 3 steps past the mouth of the alley when she heard it. Not crying, not screaming. Silence. The specific kind of silence that doesn't belong in a storm. A stillness underneath all that noise. Noise like something holding its breath. Emma stopped. She turned. And in the gap between 2 trash cans, half submerged in 6 inches of rushing brown water, she saw a small shape curled against the wall. Her heart lurched before her brain caught up. She was moving before she made a decision. Her feet splashing through the flood, the cold water rushing over her ankles as she pushed deeper into the alley. The shape didn't move, didn't react. And for 1 terrible second, Emma thought she was too late. Then the boy raised his head. His eyes found hers, and whatever Emma expected, gratitude, fear, relief, what she got was something different. He looked at her like he was calculating whether she was safe. A 6-year-old boy, soaking wet. Blood running from a cut above his right eyebrow, mixing with the rainwater on his cheek. And he was looking at her the way grown men looked at strangers in dark places. "Hey." Emma crouched down, keeping her voice steady. "Hey, it's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. What happened to you?" He didn't answer. "Are you lost? Where's your mom? Your dad?" Nothing. Just those eyes, dark and watchful, measuring her. Emma shifted closer. He flinched back, and she stopped immediately, both hands open where he could see them. Okay, I'm not moving. See just my hands. I'm Emma. What's your name?" A long pause. The rain hammered the metal fire escape above them like applause. Then very quietly, "Noah." "Noah." She let out a slow breath. "Noah, you're hurt. That cut on your head, you need a doctor. Can you tell me where your family is?" His jaw tightened. Something moved through his face, a decision being made. "I was looking for my dad," he said finally. "A man told me he knew where my dad was." Emma's stomach dropped. "A man told you that?" She kept her voice even, careful. "What man, Noah?" "I don't know his name. He came to our house. He said he could take me to my dad, but then—" Noah stopped, swallowed. "Then he left me here." The words hit Emma like a fist. Someone had used this child, had picked him up and carried him out into a midnight storm, and then abandoned him in a flooded alley like he was nothing. She felt something harden inside her chest. "How long have you been here?" she asked. "I don't know." His teeth were chattering now. The temperature had dropped. She could see him shaking, tiny shoulders vibrating with cold. "A long time." Emma made the decision the way she made all her decisions, fast and without looking at the cost. She shrugged off her jacket. It was wet, but it was warmer than nothing. She moved slowly, giving him time to watch her hands, and draped it around his shoulders. He let her. That was when she knew he was more scared than he was showing, because he accepted warmth from a stranger, which meant he had run out of options. "Do you have a phone, Noah, or a number I can call?" He reached into the front pocket of his soaked jeans. His fingers were shaking so badly he almost dropped what he pulled out, a small square of folded paper. waterlogged but still intact, the ink bleeding but legible. He held it out to her. Emma took it, unfolded it. A phone number, 10 digits, and above it in careful printed letters that looked like a child had been made to memorize them, Uncle Victor. The alley seemed to go quieter. Emma had lived in New Orleans her whole life. 28 years in this city meant you heard certain names, whether you wanted to or not. At the diner, men lowered their voices when they said it. On the street, the older women crossed themselves. In the news, reporters spoke it carefully, like touching something hot. Victor DeLuca. She had never seen him, never needed to. He existed in the city the way a storm system existed. You didn't have to see it to know what it could do. And this child was staring at her with that paper between them, and his eyes were asking her a question he didn't have words for yet. Will you help me? Emma looked at the number. She looked at the boy. She pulled out her phone. Her hands were steadier than she expected when she dialed. The call connected on the second ring. No voicemail. No recorded greeting. Just silence, and then a voice low controlled, the kind of voice that had learned to remove every unnecessary thing from itself, including warmth. Who is this? Not a question, a demand. Emma's throat tightened, but she didn't let it stop her. My name is Emma Carter. I found a little boy named Noah in an alley off Bourbon Street. He's hurt, and he's cold, and he gave me this number. He said to call Uncle Victor. The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. Emma counted them. Then the voice came back, and something had changed in it. The control was still there, but underneath it, cracking through like heat through pavement, was something raw. Where, exactly? She told him. The cross street. The alley behind the diner. The trash cans. She gave him every detail she could, fast and clear, because something in his voice told her that speed was the only right answer. Don't move, he said. Don't let him out of your sight. The line went dead. Emma lowered the phone. Noah was watching her face. Did you call him? Noah asked. I did. Is he coming? Emma looked at the entrance to the alley, the street beyond it still empty and rain-lashed. He's coming. Noah closed his eyes. His whole body seemed to release something it had been holding for hours. His shoulders dropped, his breathing slowed, and Emma realized watching him that the boy had been running on pure adrenaline, that the calm she'd mistaken for calculation had actually been the survival instinct of a child who had no other choice. She moved to sit beside him on the wet ground, her back against the wall. He didn't protest. After a moment, he leaned into her side, and she put her arm around him without saying anything about it. They waited. 7 minutes. That was how long it took. Emma heard the engines before she saw the lights. Low, powerful, more than one, pulling to a stop at the alley entrance with a precision that didn't match the chaos of the storm. Car doors opened. Footsteps. Multiple sets moving fast and coordinated. She stood, pulling Noah behind her instinctively. 3 men in dark clothing came in first, hands at their sides, scanning the alley with the kind of practiced attention that told Emma they weren't security guards hired from a temp agency. They were something else. And then the 4th figure appeared, tall, dark coat soaked through, moving with the kind of physical certainty that parted space around itself, not because people cleared the way, but because the body itself was designed to take up exactly the ground it needed, and not 1 inch more. Victor DeLuca walked past his own men like they weren't there. His eyes found Noah, and the most feared man in New Orleans ran. Not strode, not moved quickly, ran. Closed the distance between them in 4 long strides, and went down to 1 knee in 6 inches of floodwater without appearing to notice the cold. And he took Noah's face in both hands, and he looked at him, scanning, checking the way you look at something you were terrified you'd lost. Noah. His voice was different now. All that controlled precision was gone. What was left was something much older and much less protected. Noah, look at me. Are you hurt? Where are you hurt? My head, Noah said. I fell. Victor's hands moved to the cut above the boy's eye. Gentle, careful. Hands that Emma suspected had done things they'd never undo, treating this wound with the concentration of a man performing surgery. I'm here, Victor said. I've got you. Okay, I've got you. Noah grabbed 2 fists full of Victor's coat and held on. The men standing in the alley entrance looked at each other and looked away. Emma understood. They had never seen this either. She took a step back, suddenly acutely aware that she was standing in the middle of something private. Grief, relief, terror, love all collapsed together in a man kneeling in floodwater holding a small boy. Victor became aware of her. He rose. Not fast, he kept one hand on Noah's shoulder, keeping the boy close, but he straightened and turned, and his eyes found Emma. The full weight of them landed on her like something physical. She held her ground. He studied her for a long moment. The kind of look that didn't take stock of your clothes or your face, but went somewhere underneath. You found him. He found me, Emma said. Or I found him. I'm not sure which. He was in the water against that wall. He'd been there a long time. Victor's jaw moved. Something shifted in his expression that he didn't manage to fully control. You called, he said. Most people wouldn't have. Emma shrugged. Most people didn't find a 6-year-old bleeding in a flooded alley. Silence. Then Victor said simply, Come with us. Emma blinked. I'm sorry. He needs a doctor. You're the only person he's talked to tonight. Come. It wasn't phrased as a request. It also wasn't aggressive. It was the statement of a man who had decided the matter and expected the universe to cooperate, which Emma found both irritating and oddly hard to argue with. I have to be at work at 6 in the morning, she said. Victor looked at her. I'll be back by then, Emma said, and she followed him out of the alley. The car was black and quiet and warm, in a way Emma had never experienced in a vehicle before, the kind of warmth that felt engineered, that didn't let outside temperatures argue with it. Noah sat between her and Victor in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket that one of the men had produced from somewhere, already sagging against Emma's side with his eyes half closed. Victor watched him. Not like a guardian watching a child. Like a man watching something he almost lost and couldn't stop seeing the loss of, even though the child was right there. He said someone came to your house, Emma said quietly. A man who told him he knew where his father was. Victor's eyes didn't move from Noah. Yes. His father is gone. Victor said it flat and final, the way you say something when you've spent months choosing not to say it at all. His father was my brother. He died 8 months ago. Emma went still. Noah doesn't fully understand yet, Victor said. He knows his father isn't coming home, but children, they keep looking for exceptions to things. He knows his father is gone, and somewhere in his head, he built a version where that's not permanent, where there's a door that hasn't opened yet. He paused. Someone found that door and used it. The quiet in the car was different after that. Heavier. Who would do that? Emma asked. Who would use a child to? People who want to reach me. Victor said, have learned they cannot do it directly. He finally looked away from Noah and looked at Emma instead. So they reach me through what I care about. Something about the way he said it, not angry, not dramatic, just factual, made Emma feel cold in a way that had nothing to do with her wet clothes. And Noah is what you care about, she said. Victor didn't answer, but his hand moved to Noah's back, resting there steady and sure. He didn't need to answer. The estate was behind the gate that Emma only glimpsed briefly. Iron tall set back from a private road lined with trees whose canopy held the rain at bay. The car pulled into a covered entrance, and 3 people were waiting at the door, a man carrying a medical case, a woman in her 60s with her hair pulled back and her expression combining deep relief with controlled fury, and a younger man who looked at Victor like he was waiting to be told what to do next. The woman's name was Rosa. Emma learned this in the first 30 seconds because Rosa did not wait to be introduced. She stepped forward, took Noah's face in her hands, said his name twice, and then switched to rapid Italian that Emma couldn't follow, but that Noah responded to, reaching for Rosa's hand and holding it. The man with the medical case, Dr. Caruso, who introduced himself with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times in this driveway, guided Noah inside. Rosa followed. The younger man, Marcus, she thought, remained looking at Victor. Report, Victor said. We found where the man left him, Marcus said. He had a car parked 2 blocks west. We have the plates. Get me a name. Already working on it. Faster than that. Marcus nodded and stepped away. Victor turned to Emma. She was standing in the entrance of a house that was larger than any building she had ever been inside socially. Not a hospital, not a mall, but a home that had the proportions of a place where decisions were made. And she was soaking wet and wearing no jacket, and suddenly very aware that she worked a double shift at a diner and made $11 in tips, and did not belong here in any sense of the word. "You're cold," Victor said. "I'm fine." "You're shaking." Emma looked down at her hands. He wasn't wrong. "Rosa will bring you dry clothes and something hot to drink. You can wait while Noah is looked at. When you're ready to leave, I'll have someone drive you." Emma opened her mouth to say she was fine, and she could call a cab, and this was all very unexpected, and she didn't need anything from him. She thought about her $11. She thought about the eviction notice. She thought about the fact that she'd walked into a flooded alley in the middle of the night for a child she'd never met, and that she was standing here in this place because she'd made a phone call most people would not have made. "A cup of coffee would be good," she said. Victor almost smiled. "Come inside, Ms. Carter." The room Rosa brought her to was warm and yellow lit, and had bookshelves on 2 walls and a couch that Emma suspected cost more than her car. Rosa produced a set of clothes, a sweater and sweatpants, soft and plain, nothing dramatic, and pointed Emma toward an attached bathroom without ceremony or commentary, which Emma appreciated. She changed, came back out, sat on the couch. Rosa brought coffee and a plate of food that Emma hadn't asked for, bread cheese, something warm in a bowl, and set it on the table without asking whether Emma wanted it. "Eat," Rosa said. "You're thin." Emma laughed, startled. "I'm thank you." Rosa sat down in the chair across from her. For a moment she just looked at Emma, studying her in the same way Victor had, but with different math behind it. "You found Noah," Rosa said. "Yes." "How?" Emma told her. "The storm. The alley. The silence that didn't belong under all that noise." Rosa listened without interrupting, her hands folded in her lap, her expression giving nothing away. When Emma finished, Rosa was quiet for a moment. "Do you know," Rosa said slowly, "how many people in this city would have kept walking?" "I didn't really think about it," Emma said. "He was there. He needed help." Rosa looked at her for another long moment. "I've worked for Victor's family for 23 years, Rosa said. "I watched him grow up. I watched his brother grow up. And I have watched Victor since Marco died, try to carry everything himself the way he always does, because he believes if he controls enough, he can prevent every loss." She paused. "But you cannot control a child's loneliness. You cannot guard against a heart that needs to look for its father." Emma set down her coffee cup. "The man who came to the house, did Noah know him? Had he seen him before?" "No. He came in the afternoon while Victor was in meetings. He told the guards he was there about a delivery. Somehow he got through to the garden where Noah was playing." Rosa's mouth tightened. By the time anyone realized Noah was gone, an hour had passed. Emma thought about that. About someone planning carefully enough to get past Victor DeLuca's security. About someone who understood that the quickest way to hurt Victor was to pick up his 6-year-old nephew and walk away with him. "Victor must be furious," Emma said. "Victor," Rosa said, "is terrified. The fury comes later. The terrified part, that is the part he doesn't know what to do with." She stood, smoothed her hands over her skirt. "Dr. Caruso says the cut is minor. Noah will be fine. He's asking for you." Emma looked up. "For me?" "He doesn't remember my name yet," Emma said. Rosa almost smiled. "He remembers yours." Noah was in a room down the hall, smaller than Emma expected, practical, with drawings on a table and a shelf of books that had been read enough times their spines were creased. Dr. Caruso was packing his case, and Noah was sitting up on the edge of the bed, a small butterfly bandage above his right eye, wrapped in a blanket that Rosa had clearly selected specifically for him, dark blue, the soft kind. He looked up when Emma came in. "You're still here," he said. "I told you I'd stay until you were looked at." Noah studied the bandage on his arm, where blood had been cleaned. Rosa says you're the one who called Uncle Victor. You gave me the number. But you called. He looked up at her. Some people don't. When they see the name, they don't call. They just leave. Emma went still. A 6-year-old boy, telling her without drama, without self-pity, just as simple fact that some people left when they saw what his family was. I called, Emma said. I know. Noah adjusted his blanket. That means you're brave. Emma sat down on the small chair beside the bed. Or maybe I'm just stubborn. Noah considered this. Uncle Victor is stubborn too, he said. Rosa says it's the same thing. She says brave people just call it something different. Emma looked at this child, this small, strange, perceptive boy, who had been abandoned in a flood, and had still held onto a piece of paper and trusted it, and felt something shift in her chest that she couldn't quite name. Noah, she said carefully, the man who came to your house today, what did he look like? Noah's face changed. Not frightened, something quieter than that. Tall, he said. He had a ring, a silver one on his right hand, and he smelled like cigarettes and something sweet, like candy. Emma filed it away. Did he tell you anything about your father? Noah was quiet for a moment. Then, he said my dad left something for me, and that he could take me to where it was. His voice didn't break, but something moved across his face, controlled and old, in a way that was wrong on a child's face. I knew he might be lying, but I went anyway. Why? Noah looked at his hands. Because what if he wasn't? Emma didn't say anything. There wasn't anything to say. She just sat with him until Victor came back. She heard Victor before she saw him, his voice in the hallway low and sharp, speaking to Marcus. Something about cameras. Something about timelines. The professional, clipped authority of a man who had redirected his fear into movement, the way men like him always did. Then the door opened, and he came in, and when his eyes found Noah on the bed, the authority left his face completely. How are you feeling? He asked. Dr. Caruso says I'm fine, Noah reported. The cut wasn't deep. I don't need stitches. I know. I talked to him. Victor crossed to the bed, sat on the edge of it. He looked at the bandage above Noah's eye with an expression he didn't try to hide, which surprised Emma. She had expected him to conceal everything. You scared me. Noah looked at him. I know. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just... Victor exhaled. Don't do that again. You would have done the same thing, Noah said. Victor frowned. What? If someone told you they knew where Dad was, Noah said, you would have gone. The silence in that room was the loudest thing Emma had ever heard. Victor looked at his nephew for a long time. Something happened behind his eyes, something that moved like water finding a crack, slow and unstoppable. Yeah, he said finally. I would have. He reached out and pulled Noah in one arm around the boy's small back, and Noah leaned into him, and for a moment, they were just two people who had lost the same person, holding each other in a lit room while the storm continued outside. Emma stood up quietly and moved toward the door. Miss Carter. She stopped, turned. Victor was looking at her over Noah's head. Thank you, he said. It was 2 words. Plain and simple, stripped of everything unnecessary. Coming from him, it felt like more than 2 words. Emma nodded. She walked out into the hallway, and she didn't let out the breath she'd been holding until she was 3 steps away from the door. Marcus drove her home at 4 a.m. in the same black car, through streets still wet from the storm. The city was quiet, in the way it only got in the smallest hours, when even New Orleans ran out of things to do. Emma sat in the back seat and watched the streets pass, and turned over everything that had happened since she walked out of the diner with $11 in tips and wet shoes. The boy in the alley. The phone number. The man who had run through armed guards to reach a 6-year-old. The child who had walked into a trap because the alternative, the possibility that someone knew where his father was, had been unbearable to ignore. Emma thought about what Rosa had said. You cannot guard against a heart that needs to look for its father. She thought about Victor's face when Noah said, you would have done the same thing. The car stopped in front of her building. She got out, stood for a moment on the sidewalk. She looked up at the window of her apartment, the one with the cracked sill and the light she left on, because coming home to dark was something she'd never been able to make herself do. She thought about the eviction notice on her kitchen table. She thought about Noah saying simply, matter-of-factly, without asking for sympathy, "Some people see the name and they just leave." Emma Carter went upstairs, set her alarm for 5:30, lay down on her bed without changing, and stared at the ceiling until the alarm went off because her mind wouldn't stop asking the same question the boy in the storm had already answered for her. What do you do when you know someone is in the rain and you have an umbrella, and the only reason not to stop is that it's easier to keep walking? She already knew what she did. She'd known for 28 years. The question she hadn't asked yet, the one that had followed her home through the wet New Orleans streets and up the stairs and into her apartment, was what happened when the person you stopped for pulled you into something much larger and much more dangerous than a flooded alley. And whether if she'd known the answer in advance, she would have kept walking. She didn't think she would have. That was either the bravest thing about her or the most foolish. She still wasn't sure which. Emma went to work at 6 in the morning with 4 hours of no sleep and a mind that refused to sit still. She poured coffee. She smiled. She carried plates. She refilled water glasses without being asked, which was the kind of automatic kindness that happened when your hands were busy, but your head was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere on the other side of the city, in a house behind an iron gate, where a little boy with a butterfly bandage above his eye was waking up in a room with drawings on the table. She didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not Darlene, who worked the morning shift and talked constantly, and would have turned the whole thing into a story to tell her sister. Not Ray the manager, who would have asked too many questions with the wrong kind of interest behind them. Emma kept it the way she kept most things close, quiet, managed. But the name stayed with her. Victor DeLuca. She'd heard it the way everyone in New Orleans heard it, attached to rumors that people offered carefully with lowered voices, like handing over something they weren't sure was safe to touch. That he controlled 3 city council members. That the Port Authority moved on his schedule. That a developer who had tried to build over a neighborhood Victor had protected woke up one morning to find his financing had evaporated overnight. Every bank, every investor, every silent partner suddenly unavailable. Nobody talked about anything specific. Nobody had to. The city understood Victor DeLuca the way it understood the river, not by looking directly at it, but by watching what moved around it. And Emma had called him at midnight. And he had come. She was on her 3rd table of the morning when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost let it go. Then something pulled at her, the same instinct that had turned her around in the alley, and she stepped into the back hallway and answered, "Ms. Carter." The voice was the same, low, controlled, carrying its weight quietly. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Emma leaned against the wall. "I'm at work." "I know, I won't keep you." A pause. "Noah is asking for you." She hadn't expected that. She'd expected she didn't know what she'd expected. A formal thank you, maybe. A car bringing back the jacket she'd left in the alley. Something that closed the door politely and cleanly. "He barely knows me," Emma said. "He knows you stayed," Victor said. "For him, that's enough." She stood in the back hallway of Magnolia Diner for 3 seconds, listening to the sound of plates and voices from the kitchen, and she thought about the eviction notice, and she thought about Noah's face when he said some people see the name and they just leave. "I get off at 2, she said. "I'll send a car." The line went dead. Emma put her phone in her apron pocket and went back to her tables and didn't think about what she was walking into, or told herself she wasn't. The two things were not the same. The car arrived at 1:58, which told her something about the man who sent it. She got in without asking questions. The driver didn't offer any. They moved through the early afternoon city still wet from the previous night's storm, the streets carrying that particular washed clean smell that New Orleans only got after real rain. And Emma watched the neighborhoods change as they moved away from the diner and toward the quieter, heavier parts of the city, where money sat so old it had stopped needing to announce itself. The gate opened before the car reached it. Inside the house looked different in daylight, larger somehow and also more lived in than she'd registered in the dark. Rosa was at the door again, and this time she looked at Emma with something that might have been approval if Rosa was the kind of person who expressed approval easily, which she clearly wasn't. "He's in the garden," Rosa said. Emma followed her through the house and out through a set of glass doors into a garden that stopped her for a second. Not because it was grand, but because it wasn't. It was organized and tended, but it had the feeling of somewhere that was genuinely used, where dirt got under fingernails and things were planted and cared for over time. Raised beds along one wall, a bench under a fig tree, and on that bench, Noah sitting with a sketchbook open on his lap, drawing something with intense concentration. Victor was standing a few feet away, watching the boy draw. He heard Emma before he turned, she was certain of that, but he waited a beat before he did, which told her he was the kind of person who preferred to have his back to doors as rarely as possible and chose his moments of vulnerability deliberately. He turned, looked at her. "You came," he said. "I said I would." Something shifted in his expression. Micro and quick, but she caught it. As if people saying they would do something and then doing it was to him slightly remarkable. Noah looked up from his sketchbook. His face changed, completely open, and immediate the wariness from the alley entirely gone. "Emma." He held up the sketchbook. "I'm drawing the storm from last night. Do you want to see?" Emma crossed the garden and sat on the bench beside him. The drawing was large and ambitious and bore almost no resemblance to a storm, but the energy of it, the heavy lines, the size of the marks felt right. She looked at it for a real moment. "That's the alley," she said. Noah looked at her. "How did you know the trash cans?" She pointed. "You got them right." Noah looked at his drawing with new satisfaction. "I'm going to give it to you," he said, "when it's finished, to remember." Emma didn't say that she didn't need a drawing to remember last night. She just said thank you, which was the right answer. Victor had come to stand a few feet away listening. She could feel him the way you felt, whether not dramatically, just as a change in atmosphere, a density. "Walk with me," he said. Not to Noah, to her. Noah didn't look up. "Don't be boring," he said, which sounded like something he'd said before a stock complaint, the kind that children deploy when adults remove themselves from the interesting parts of the day. "Never," Victor said, and the word came out differently than Emma expected, lighter with a texture underneath it that was almost fond, almost easy, almost like someone who had once been good at lightness and hadn't entirely forgotten how. They walked along the path that ran along the garden's edge. Victor had his hands in his coat pockets, which Emma recognized as the posture of a man who had learned to keep his hands neutral in uncertain situations. "Marcus has a name," Victor said. Emma waited. "The man who came to the house. The one who took Noah." He said it flatly, no drama in the delivery. "His name is Leon Ferris. He's not an independent actor, he works for someone." "Someone who wanted to reach you," Emma said. "Someone who has been trying to reach me for 8 months. Victor paused beside the fig tree. "Since Marco died." She absorbed this. 8 months. Since Noah's father died. Someone had been watching Victor's grief, mapping his vulnerabilities and landing on the boy. "Who?" she asked. "A man named Raymond Breck." Victor's voice didn't harden when he said it. It went flat in a different way, the way stone was flat. "He runs the Eastern Corridor. Imports, distribution, certain financial arrangements. We've never overlapped directly. But Marco, my brother, had information about Breck's operations. Information that Breck spent a long time trying to ensure never reached the people who would use it. And Marco had it. Marco was going to hand it over. It would have ended Breck's operation and taken several of his associates down with him." Victor turned and looked at her directly. "Marco died before he could." Emma felt the ground shift under that sentence. "How did he die?" she asked. The pause before Victor answered was its own answer. "It was ruled an accident," he said. Emma stood very still. The garden around them was green and quiet, and completely at odds with what was being said inside it. "So Breck had your brother killed," Emma said. "And now he's using Noah to warn you, to threaten you." "To find out if Marco gave me the information before he died," Victor said. "If I have it, and whether I intend to use it." "Do you?" He looked at her. "Do you have it?" she clarified. No, Victor said. Marco protected everyone he loved by not telling them, including me. He exhaled, something old and heavy in the sound. My brother thought he was keeping me safe. He didn't consider what would happen after. Emma thought about Noah saying, "You would have done the same thing." Thought about Victor saying, "Yeah, I would have." Two brothers who had spent their lives trying to protect each other by keeping each other in the dark. And the thing they'd been hiding from had found them both anyway. Last night, Emma said slowly, wasn't just about reaching you, was it? It was about seeing how far you'd go for Noah, whether you'd trade whatever they wanted to get him back. Victor looked at her with something she couldn't immediately name. You understood that quickly, he said. I'm a waitress, Emma said. I watch people all day. You learn to read what's underneath the thing they're actually saying. A pause. Then, he wasn't in real danger last night. Ferris left him there deliberately visible enough to be found hurt enough to create urgency, but not enough to be fatal. It was a message. A demonstration. His voice went flat and hard at the edges. Of what they could do if they chose to. Emma thought about the alley. The 6 inches of floodwater. The cut above Noah's eye. A child used as a prop in someone else's strategy. That's monstrous, she said. Yes, Victor said simply. It is. They stood in the garden. The afternoon light moved through the fig tree in slow patches. Why are you telling me this? Emma asked. Victor looked at her for a moment. Because you stayed, he said. Last night. In the alley and here in this morning when I called. You kept making choices that you didn't have to make. And in my experience, people who keep making those choices deserve to know what they've walked into. Emma absorbed this. Is it dangerous? She asked. For me. Is it dangerous that I was there last night? That I called you? The pause that followed was 2 seconds too long to be reassuring. I don't know yet, Victor said honestly. Ferris was watching the alley. Whether he noted you, who you are, where you work, I don't know. Emma felt something cold drop through her chest. Not panic. Something quieter and more serious than that. So I might be in danger because I stopped for a child in the rain, she said. Possibly. She stopped. Took a breath. That's a very specific kind of unfair. Yes, Victor said. It is. And something moved across his face that might have been guilt if he let it land long enough to call it that. I have people watching your building, your workplace. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Emma stared at him. You already did that, before asking me. I did it before you got in the car this morning, he said. Before I called. She should have been angry. She knew that. It was the right response to learning that a man she'd known for less than 12 hours had placed surveillance on her apartment without her consent. The problem was that it was also the response of someone who was trying to protect her, and Emma had spent enough of her life without anyone trying to protect her that she couldn't organize the anger the way it deserved. You could have told me, she said. I could have, he agreed. I should have. The directness of it startled her. Men like Victor DeLuca. Men who occupied the space he occupied didn't usually concede ground cleanly. They justified. They redirected. They explained why they were right even when they were doing something wrong. He had just said, I should have, like he meant it. Emma filed that away alongside everything else. Back inside Rosa had made lunch that Noah ate with the total commitment of a child recovering from a serious adventure, narrating between bites. The man's silver ring, the smell of candy and cigarettes. The street he'd walked down. The sound the water made against the walls of the alley. Victor sat across from him and listened to every word. Not performing attention. Actually listening the way you listened when you knew the details mattered when you were cataloging and cross-referencing in real time. Emma watched him do it and understood that this was how he functioned. 2 things at once, the surface and the calculation underneath running parallel and continuous. He told me he was a friend of Dad's, Noah said, dragging a piece of bread through his soup. He said Dad had told him to come get me if anything ever happened. Victor's jaw tightened. Did he say that specifically? Victor asked. Those exact words your dad had told him to. Noah thought about it. He said, "Your father asked me to make sure you were safe." That's what he said. Emma watched Victor process this. Whatever it meant to him, he kept it below the surface, but she could see the surface change. "Smart," Victor said quietly enough that it wasn't directed at Noah. "Excuse me," Emma said. Victor looked at her. He used Marco's voice to get to Noah. Not threats, not a direct approach. He came in through the thing Noah trusted most. He looked at his nephew. He used the thing you love against you. Noah had stopped eating. He was looking at Victor with an expression that was working hard to be neutral. "I knew he might be lying," Noah said again. The same thing he'd said in the room last night to Emma. The thing he kept saying, like saying it enough times would explain or excuse the choice he'd made. "Noah." Victor's voice was quiet. "I'm not angry at you. Not even a little. You understand that—" Noah's neutral expression cracked at the edges. "Rosa said you were scared. Rosa was right. I was terrified." Victor held the boy's eyes. "There's a difference between terrified of you and terrified for you." Noah considered this with the serious gravity of a child doing real mathematical work. "Okay," he said finally, and went back to his soup. Emma looked at Victor across the table. He was looking at the boy, and his face was doing the thing again, the thing where the controlled professional exterior went thin, and something unguarded pushed through underneath. He loved this child so much, it was almost alarming to witness. After lunch, Noah was taken upstairs by Rosa for what was diplomatically called rest, but which Rosa referred to with a firmness that left no interpretation available. Emma remained at the table with Victor, who poured them both coffee without asking. Which she was starting to understand was his way. He moved as if he already knew what was needed and supplied it. "Tell me about yourself," he said. Emma looked up. "Why?" "Because I'd like to know." "You probably already know," she said. "You had people at my apartment this morning before you called me." A pause. Then, "Fair." "What do you know?" she asked. "Emma Claire Carter," he said without apparent hesitation. 28. Born here. Lived here your whole life. Mother passed 4 years ago. No siblings. 2 jobs. Magnolia Diner and an overnight janitorial contract that you dropped 6 weeks ago because it conflicted with the diner's new schedule. Renting an apartment on Decatur that you've been in for 3 years. Behind on rent by 11 weeks. Eviction notice issued 9 days ago. Emma felt the precision of it land on her like cold water. "You had 9 days worth of my life in 9 hours, she said. "Less than that, honestly." She picked up her coffee cup, set it down without drinking. "And what do you do with that information?" "Nothing unless you want me to." She looked at him. "I'm not in the business of leverage, Ms. Carter," he said. "Not with civilians, not with people who pulled my nephew out of a flooded alley." He met her eyes. "I asked about you because you matter to Noah, and Noah is the thing I protect above everything. Understanding who you are isn't a threat. It's due diligence." Emma thought about this for a moment. "You protect him above everything," she said. But he was lonely enough to follow a stranger into a storm. The silence that came after that was different from the other silences. It had edges. Victor didn't respond immediately. He looked at the table. His hand around the coffee cup tightened slightly, then released. "I know," he said. "That's not a criticism," Emma said. I'm saying it because it's the thing nobody probably says to you." "No," he said. "They don't. You have cameras and guards and gates and a doctor on call. And Noah said a stranger came to the garden while you were in meetings." She paused. "What does he do in that garden when he's alone?" Victor looked up at her. "He draws," he said. "What else?" A pause. "I don't know," Victor said, quietly, like an admission that cost something. Emma nodded. Not triumphant, not pointed, just acknowledging the answer for what it was. "He told me last night," she said, "that he went with the man because he had to know. Because what if the man was telling the truth?" She looked at Victor. Noah wasn't reckless. He was lonely and grieving, and he made a calculated bet that turned out to be wrong. That's different. Victor was very still. He needed someone who would have been in that garden with him, Emma said. Who would have seen the man come in? Not because of security, because they were there. She wasn't telling him he'd failed. She was handing him something she thought he needed, even if it hurt on the way in. She could see him receive it, see the way his face absorbed it, processed it, went somewhere with it that he didn't speak out loud. "You're very direct," he said. "I grew up in a city where people don't say the hard thing," she said. "I watched it cost people a lot. I decided young that I'd rather say it." He studied her. "How much is your back rent?" Emma blinked at the gear shift. "What? 11 weeks at what rate?" "Victor, I'm not buying your silence," he said immediately, precisely like he'd anticipated the interpretation. "I'm not creating a debt. I am correcting a situation that exists partly because you spent your night doing something for my family that put you in danger. That's not charity. That's arithmetic." Emma stared at him. "I don't take money from people I've just met," she said. "Then don't think of me as someone you just met. Think of me as someone whose nephew you saved." "I didn't save him. I found him and made a call." "That was saving him. Do you understand what would have happened if someone else had found him? Someone who recognized the name and made a different choice, who called Breck instead of me." The thought landed fully for the first time. Emma hadn't let herself think that far. She'd been thinking about the boy in the water. She hadn't been thinking about all the other possible versions of the same night. "Oh," she said. "Yes," Victor said. They sat with that for a moment. "I'll think about the money," Emma said. "I'm not saying yes." "I'll be here," Victor said. She was in the hallway. Rosa, having retrieved her jacket, dried now and pressed, which was such a Rosa thing to do, that Emma almost smiled when Marcus appeared at the far end of the corridor and looked at Victor with the specific expression of a man carrying information he'd been told to deliver as soon as it was confirmed. Victor saw it, excused himself from Emma with a small gesture. Emma watched from 10 feet away as Marcus spoke too quietly for her to hear. She watched Victor's face. Watched it go through something, not shock, not someone who was easy to shock, but a sharp reorganization, a recalculation at speed. Then Victor turned and looked at her, and something had changed in his eyes. "Emma," he said, "you need to stay." She went still. "Stay. Breck's people were watching the alley last night. We have confirmation, and they have—" He paused. The pause was brief but careful. "They have footage of you, your face, your name tag." The cold that moved through Emma was different from last night's rain, more specific. "They know who I am," she said. "They know you called me," Victor said. "And in their calculation that makes you useful, or it makes you a liability. Either way." "Either way, I'm not safe in my apartment," Emma finished. Victor held her gaze. "Not tonight." Emma looked at the jacket in her hands, at the hallway, at the house around her with its staff and its cameras and its garden where a boy drew pictures of storms. She thought about her $11 in tips. She thought about the eviction notice. She thought about walking out the door last night and telling herself it was a strange chapter and going back to her regular life, and how her regular life had apparently decided not to wait for her. "Noah will be glad," Rosa said from behind her, with the satisfaction of someone who had known for several hours how this was going to go. Emma turned. "Did you know?" "No," Rosa said. "But I hoped." She gestured toward the corridor. "Your room is the second door on the left. I aired it this morning." Emma looked at Victor. "You already had a room prepared," she said. "Rosa had a room prepared," Victor said. "I had nothing to do with it. He told me to air the second door," Rosa said without a trace of apology. Emma should have been angry. She landed somewhere past anger in the territory that came after the place where you recognize that a thing had happened, and the useful response was to deal with it rather than fighting the shape of it. "I need my things from my apartment," she said. "Marcus will go with you, tonight after dark." She looked at him for a long moment. This man she had known for less than 20 hours. This feared, careful, controlled, surprisingly direct man who had run through 6 inches of floodwater for a 6-year-old and said I should have when he was wrong, and somehow had her back rent figured out before breakfast. "Okay," she said. but I'm calling Ray and letting him know I'll be in late tomorrow, and I'm keeping my job." "Of course," Victor said. "And if I decide I want to leave, I leave. No arguments." "Understood." "And the money?" She pointed at him. "We haven't agreed on anything." "Noted," he said. Emma looked at Rosa. "Second door on the left," she said. "I'll show you," Rosa said. And that was how Emma Carter, 28 waitress, $11 in tips eviction notice, ended up inside the most protected house in New Orleans. She didn't know yet what was coming. She didn't know about the information Victor didn't have. About Breck's next move. About what Marcus would find when he went to her apartment that night and came back with something he wouldn't show her until morning. She just walked down the hallway toward the second door on the left, jacket over her arm, and told herself that she had made harder decisions in harder circumstances, and that whatever came next, she had survived everything that had come before. She had. The question was whether what came next would require more than survival. It would. Marcus came back from Emma's apartment at 10:47 at night, and he didn't say anything when he walked in the door. He handed Victor a sealed plastic bag and stood with his hands at his sides and his jaw set in the specific way of a man delivering something he wishes he didn't have to. Victor looked at the bag for a moment without opening it. "Where was it?" he asked. "Inside her door frame," Marcus said. "Wedged between the wood and the wall. You'd never see it unless you were looking." "How long?" "Device like that could be a week. Could be 3 days." Marcus paused. "Could have been placed last night after Ferris saw her in the alley." Victor turned the bag over in his hands. Small. Black. The size of a thumbnail. A listening device so standard. It was almost insulting. The kind that meant Breck's people weren't being clever. They were being comprehensive. Covering every angle. Vacuuming up everything in reach. They were listening to her apartment, Victor said. If she'd gone home last night and talked to anyone on the phone, anyone who asked about what happened, they would have had it all. Victor set the bag on the table. Emma was upstairs. She didn't know yet. He'd told Marcus to wait until they had the full picture before telling her, which was a decision he was already regretting, because it was exactly the kind of protection without consent that she'd called him on that afternoon. He went upstairs and knocked on the second door on the left. She opened it in 12 seconds, which told him she wasn't sleeping. She was still dressed, sitting on top of the covers with her shoes on, which told him even more she was ready to move, had been keeping herself ready. The instinct of someone who'd learned not to get too comfortable anywhere. Victor held up the evidence bag. Emma looked at it, looked at him, read his face before he said a word. "That was in my apartment," she said. "Yes." "How long?" "We don't know." She took the bag from his hand and looked at the device through the plastic. Her expression was doing something controlled and complicated, anger, working its way through shock, reason, moving in behind both. "So, anything I said in my apartment," she said slowly. "In the last week, possibly longer," they heard. "Yes. I call my neighbor Carol every Sunday night," Emma said. "We talk for an hour. I told her everything that happened. Last night, after I got home. I was on the phone with her at 4 in the morning because I couldn't sleep, and she's 70 years old and she lives alone and she was awake because she always is." She stopped. Victor was already moving. Already pulling out his phone, already dialing Marcus. "The neighbor," he said when Marcus picked up. "Carol, get a name and address and have someone there now, not tomorrow, now." He heard Marcus moving before the line went dead. Emma was still holding the evidence bag. Her knuckles had gone pale. "She's 70 years old," Emma said. "She has nothing to do with any of this." "She will be safe," Victor said. "I promise you that." "Don't make promises about things you can't control," Emma said, sharp and immediate, the fear finding its edge. "Then I promise you I will do everything in my power to make it true," he said, "which is more than most people can offer." Emma set the bag on the dresser, pressed both hands flat on the surface and breathed. In, out. The kind of breathing that was doing visible work. "What do they want?" she asked. "Breck, what is the actual thing he wants from you?" "He wants to know if I have Marco's files," Victor said. "The information Marco gathered on his operations." "And you don't?" "I don't." Emma turned around. Does he believe that... Victor met her eyes. No, he doesn't. So telling him won't end it. Correct. She looked at him for a long moment. Then what ends it? The question sat between them, honest and hard. Victor had been asking it for 8 months, turning it over in the small hours, arriving at the same answer every time, and then putting it away because the answer required things he hadn't been ready for. Marco hid the files, Victor said, before he died. He hid them well enough that Breck's people haven't found them in 8 months of looking. If I find them first and hand them to the right people, Breck's entire operation comes apart. He knows that, which is why he's doing everything he can to find out if I already have them, or to prevent me from looking. Emma stared at him. Your brother hid something that could destroy a criminal organization, and he died before he could use it. And now the man who killed him is threatening his son to stop you from finding it. Yes. And you've spent 8 months. Emma stopped, started again. You've spent 8 months protecting Noah, managing the estate, managing whatever it is you manage, and you haven't been looking. The silence that answered her was its own confirmation. Why? She asked. Victor was quiet for a moment. Because looking means moving. Moving means risk. And Noah... He stopped. Emma finished it for him. Noah is the reason you stopped moving. Victor looked at her. He's 6 years old. He lost his father. I am the only family he has left. Every resource I put toward finding those files is a resource I'm not putting toward protecting him. Emma crossed her arms. So Breck wins by default. As long as you're standing still, he's winning. Standing still keeps Noah safe. Does it? Emma said. Because Noah followed a stranger into a storm. Because Noah was lonely enough to leave this house with a man he didn't know. Because someone used his grief, and the magic words your father and Noah walked right out the gate. She looked at Victor directly. Standing still isn't keeping him safe. It's just delaying the next attempt. Victor's jaw tightened. She could see it. Could see the truth of what she was saying landing somewhere it wasn't welcome. You're right, he said. I know. You say that a lot. I'm right a lot, Emma said without arrogance. I've just spent most of my life in rooms where nobody wanted to hear it. Marcus called back at 11:22. Carol was fine. His people had reached her apartment determined it wasn't bugged, and the older woman had been so alarmed by the arrival of 2 serious-looking men at her door that she'd offered them cookies, which Marcus relayed with the baffled tone of someone still processing it. Emma took the phone out of Victor's hand without asking permission. Marcus. A pause. Ms. Carter. Tell me exactly what you said to her. We told her we were associates of yours and that there'd been a security concern at your building and we were checking on neighbors in the area. Did she believe you? She gave us cookies, Marcus said, and asked if you were all right. Emma closed her eyes. Tell her I'll call her in the morning. Tell her I'm fine. Use those words. Yes, ma'am. Emma handed the phone back. Victor took it without comment, which was the right move. Thank you, Emma said, for moving fast. You shouldn't have to thank me for it, Victor said. It should have been done 3 hours ago before I let you go to sleep without telling you. There it was again. The direct acknowledgement. No justification, no hedge. Emma filed it alongside all the other times he'd done it, building a picture of a man who had decided at some point, and for reasons she didn't fully understand yet, that the only currency worth anything was honesty, even when it cost him. Go to sleep, he said. Tomorrow, things move. Emma looked at him. What happens tomorrow? Tomorrow, Victor said. I stop standing still. She slept. Surprisingly completely, the way exhaustion eventually overwhelmed anxiety if you gave it enough time. She woke at 7 to the sound of the house already in motion. Voices downstairs, the smell of coffee finding its way under the door, and somewhere unmistakably Noah's voice asking a rapid series of questions that Rosa was answering with the patience of someone who had been answering questions for 23 years. Emma came downstairs to find the kitchen table covered in photographs. Not photographs. Maps. Aerial images. Documents with columns of numbers that she didn't try to read. And Victor standing with a coffee cup talking to 2 men she hadn't seen before. older one with gray in his beard, both carrying themselves with a stillness that was familiar to her. Now the stillness of people who worked in Victor's world. He looked up when she came in. "Coffee's on the counter," he said, as if she lived there, as if it was the most ordinary morning. Noah was sitting at the far end of the table, eating toast, and very pointedly not looking at the documents, which told Emma that someone had told him not to look at them. "Did you sleep?" Noah asked her. "I did. You?" "Mostly." He pushed a piece of toast toward her. Rosa made extra. Emma took the toast, stood at the counter with her coffee, and watched Victor work, and decided that the best thing she could do right now was be quiet and observant, which was something she was good at. The two men she didn't know left 20 minutes later. Marcus arrived at the back entrance shortly after carrying a laptop that he opened on the cleared section of the table. "We have Marco's phone records," Marcus said. "Full archive, and we cross-referenced against the timeline." Victor looked at the screen. "Show me." Emma took her coffee and moved closer because nobody told her not to. On the screen was a grid of calls, dates, durations, numbers. Marcus pointed to a cluster of calls from 4 days before Marco DeLuca had died. "He made 6 calls in 48 hours to the same number," Marcus said. "Numbers registered to a law firm in Baton Rouge, Devereaux and Partners." "I don't know them," Victor said. "Small firm, specialty in estate and civil documentation." Marcus clicked to a new screen. "They have a record of receiving a package from Marco DeLuca, signed and witnessed 9 days before his death. Under their file management system it gets logged and held. No follow-up instructions were given for delivery." Victor went still. "He sent the files to a law firm," Victor said. "He sent something," Marcus said. "We don't know yet what, but the timing." "The timing is not a coincidence," Victor said. Emma set down her coffee cup. "He was protecting them, Marco. He knew something was going to happen, and he put the information somewhere that Breck couldn't reach." Both men looked at her. "A law firm has privilege," she said. "And if no delivery instructions were given, the package just sits there, indefinitely, legally protected, waiting for whoever comes with the right credentials to claim it." Victor looked at Marcus. "She's right," Marcus said, which he said with a tone that suggested he'd been working toward the same conclusion and was slightly annoyed she'd arrived there first. "What credentials?" Victor asked. "What does someone need to claim it?" Marcus clicked again. "That's the part we're still working on. The firm won't respond to indirect inquiries. They'd need to be approached directly, by someone with standing." "I'm his brother," Victor said. "That might be enough, or Marco might have specified something more particular." Marcus paused. "There's one other thing." He pulled up a new document. A name at the top. Emma read it before Victor spoke it. "Leon Ferris," Marcus said. "The man who took Noah. He was booked on a flight out of Louis Armstrong Airport this morning at 6 a.m. Victor's eyes went flat. "Was. Cancelled. He didn't make it." "Where is he?" Marcus looked at Victor with an expression that answered the question without words. Victor nodded once. Emma didn't ask. She understood that there were sections of this world that ran on different rules, and that asking for details she wasn't equipped to use would help nobody. "Does Breck know his man didn't make the flight?" Victor asked. "Probably by now," Marcus said. "Then he knows we have him, and he knows we're close to something." Victor turned and looked at the window. "He'll move faster." "That's what I'd expect," Marcus said. "Then we move faster." The call to Devereaux and Partners happened at 9:15 in Victor's office, which Emma was not in, but heard through the door she'd positioned herself near, not ashamed of it. She heard Victor's voice, measured, professional, warmer than she'd expected, deploying a version of himself that was more polished and less direct than the man she'd spent 18 hours with. The call lasted 6 minutes. When he came out, his expression had changed. "Marco specified a secondary claimant," Victor said. Marcus, standing 3 feet away, went rigid. "Who?" he asked. "A notarized letter from the secondary claimant and a verified ID." Victor looked at the floor for a moment, then up. "The secondary claimant is Noah." The hallway went quiet. Emma felt the logic of it unfold slowly with the terrible elegance of something planned by someone who loved his son and his brother and was trying to protect them all at once. Marco didn't trust me with it, Victor said, not wounded, just stating it. He knew that if I had the files I would use them immediately and it would put me in Breck's crosshairs before I was ready. So he gave them to Noah. Technically, procedurally, the only person who can claim them is a 6-year-old boy. Which means the only person who can get them, Marcus said slowly, is whoever is acting as Noah's legal guardian. Yes, Victor said. Which is you. Which is me. But I need Noah's signature, on a letter, witnessed. Victor exhaled. My brother left me a paper trail that requires me to involve his son in order to do the one thing Marco died trying to make possible. Emma had been listening from the hallway. She stepped in now because pretending she wasn't there felt dishonest. Marco knew you, she said. Victor looked at her. He knew you'd throw yourself at this alone if he let you. He built in a reason you'd have to slow down. He built in a reason you'd have to think about Noah before you moved. Victor looked at her for a long time. That is the most Marco thing I have ever heard, he said. Quiet, a little undone by it. He sounds like someone who knew you very well, Emma said. Better than I knew him, Victor said. And the grief in it was clean and simple, and not performed at all, which made it harder to be in the room with than any version of grief Emma had seen at a distance. They told Noah at noon. Victor sat across from the boy at the kitchen table. Rosa stood at the counter. Emma was in the chair to Noah's left, close enough that he could feel her there if he needed to. Victor explained it without talking down to him. Gave him the honest version stripped of the darkest details, but not falsified. Marco had hidden something important, something that would help keep them safe, and he had trusted Noah to be the key to finding it. Noah listened with his particular focused stillness. When Victor finished, Noah was quiet for a moment. Dad knew this was going to happen, Noah said. He was trying to be careful, Victor said. He was trying to protect everyone. He couldn't protect himself, Noah said. The sentence dropped into the room like something falling from a height, clean and heavy, and completely without self-pity, which made it worse. No, Victor said. He couldn't. Did you know he was in danger? Victor met the boy's eyes. Not enough. I knew he was being careful. I didn't know how much danger he was in until it was too late. Do you feel bad about that? Every day, Victor said. Noah absorbed this. I do too, he said. I keep thinking about things I should have said to him, before. He looked at his hands. I told him his coffee smelled bad the last morning. That was the last thing I said to him. Emma reached over and put her hand over Noah's. He didn't pull back. Just looked at her hand for a moment, then went back to Victor. Okay, Noah said. I'll sign the letter. Tell me what to write. Victor looked at his nephew for a long moment, and Emma saw on his face the full weight of what Marco had built this child, this trust, this terrible and loving complication. I'll be right there with you, Victor said. I know, Noah said. You always are. He paused. You're just not always in the room. Victor didn't have an answer for that. He looked like he'd been handed something he deserved to hold. The letter was drafted and witnessed by 2 o'clock. Marcus had it digitally transmitted to Devereaux and partners by 2:15. By 3:30, a courier from the firm arrived at the estate with a sealed archive box that had been sitting in a storage room in a Baton Rouge law office for 8 months while a war quietly positioned itself around it. Victor opened it alone in his office. Marcus stood outside. Emma and Noah were in the garden. Emma because she understood this was private Noah, because Rosa had appeared with his sketchbook at the exact right moment, in the way Rosa always did. He was in there for 47 minutes. When he came out, his face was set in the careful blankness of a man who had just seen something that confirmed his worst understanding and his best hope at the same time. It's everything, he said to Marcus. Marco was thorough. Names, transactions, dates, wire transfers, documented meetings. Everything that ties Breck to 12 years of operations, including... Victor stopped. Including Marco's death. Marcus straightened. It's enough. It's more than enough, Victor said. It doesn't go to a local prosecutor. It goes federal. I already know who to call. Breck has connections. Not above a certain level, Victor said. Marco made sure of that. He specifically documented 3 instances of Breck attempting to compromise federal officers. He gave us the floor above Breck's reach. A pause. My brother was more careful than I gave him credit for. What do you need? Marcus asked. I need it in the right hands before Breck realizes we have it. He looked at his watch. How fast can you get me a secure channel to the FBI field office? 20 minutes. Make it 15. Emma found out what had happened in pieces first from Marcus, who told her the broad shape without the details, and then from Victor, who found her in the garden after Noah had gone inside with Rosa and told her the rest. She listened without interrupting. Watched his face as he told her about the files, about Marco's documentation, about the federal call that was already in motion. Watched the exhaustion and the relief moving through him simultaneously, 2 rivers running in the same channel. Is it over? She asked when he finished. Not yet. Not until it's processed, and Breck knows he has no move left. Victor looked at the garden. A few days, maybe less. And until then, this house is the safest place you can be. He looked at her. You and Carol both. Emma laughed short and surprised. You had Carol moved. Offered her alternative accommodation, Victor said carefully. Rosa made the call. Apparently Carol packed a bag in 4 minutes and told Rosa she'd been looking for an excuse to leave her building for 2 years. Emma shook her head. She's going to talk about this for the rest of her life. She already is, Victor said. She called Rosa's a nice young woman. Emma looked at him. He was almost smiling. It changed his face in a way that made him look younger, less armored, like a glimpse of the person who had existed before. All the loss and the walls and the empire he'd built, to replace the things he couldn't protect. Victor, she said. Yes. Noah said you're always there but not always in the room. She held his eyes. What are you going to do about that? He held her gaze for a long moment. Not defensive, not performative, just present with the question, letting it sit where it needed to. I'm going to be in the room, he said. Good, Emma said. You'll hold me to it. She looked at him. Thought about $11 in tips, and a flooded alley, and a piece of paper with 2 words on it, and a phone call that had unraveled the last 4 days of her life in ways she was still calculating. I wasn't planning on going anywhere, she said. Something happened in his expression that he didn't try to hide this time. A small unlocking. A door opening instead of staying shut. Inside the house, they heard Noah laughing at something Rosa said, bright and unguarded and completely without grief in it, the laugh of a child who had for this moment put the hard things down. Victor turned toward the sound, and Emma watched his face do the thing. It kept doing the thing where all the armor went transparent and what was underneath came forward. And this time what was underneath was not terror or grief or calculation. It was something quieter than all of those. It was a man learning slowly in real time how to let himself belong to something again. Outside, the city of New Orleans moved through the afternoon, carrying its noise and its water and its old complicated history forward. And in a garden behind an iron gate, 2 people who had met in a storm stood side by side listening to a child laugh. The worst was not over yet. But for the first time in 8 months, the door was open. The call to the FBI field office lasted 31 minutes. Emma knew this because she counted sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of coffee, gone cold, listening to the silence from Victor's closed office door and measuring it against the sound of the house breathing around her. Rosa moved through the kitchen without speaking. Marcus stood near the back entrance, phone in hand, doing the particular kind of waiting that looked like stillness, but was actually every muscle coiled. Noah had fallen asleep on the couch in the side room, his sketchbook open on his chest, a half-finished drawing of the garden face up on the cushion beside him. When Victor's office door opened, the sound of it brought every head up simultaneously. He walked out carrying nothing. His face was composed in the careful way of someone who had just done something irreversible and was already living in the consequence of it. It's done, he said. Marcus exhaled through his nose. Rosa set down the dish she was holding. Emma looked at Victor across the kitchen. They took it. Special Agent Diaz, Victor said. She's been building a parallel case on Breck for 14 months. Marco's documentation fills 3 gaps she couldn't close on her own. He paused. She said Marco was methodical. She said it like a compliment. It was a compliment, Emma said. Victor looked at his hands for a moment, the way people did when they were holding something invisible. Diaz wants the original archive under federal seal by 9 tomorrow morning. Marcus will transport it tonight. He looked at Marcus. Unmarked. Different route than expected. Already planning it, Marcus said. What happens to Breck? Emma asked. Diaz moves on the warrant within 48 hours, maybe less. Once it's in motion. Victor stopped. Once it's in motion, Breck becomes a legal problem instead of my problem. The distinction hung in the room. Emma understood what it cost him to say that. Victor DeLuca was a man who had operated for years in a world where problems were managed directly, where the line between the legal and the personal was something you drew yourself. Marco's death. His brother's murder to a federal agent named Diaz, and trusting an institution to deliver justice was a different kind of act than anything in his history. It was the act of someone choosing to become a different version of himself. Are you all right? Emma asked. He looked at her, slightly surprised by the directness. I will be. That's not the same as yes. No, he said. It isn't. Rosa appeared at Emma's elbow and replaced the cold coffee with a fresh cup, a gesture so precisely timed it was almost choreography. Sit down, Rosa told Victor. He sat, which told Emma more about Rosa's authority in this house than anything she'd observed in 3 days. Breck's response came at 11 that night. And it didn't come as a threat. It came as a phone call to Victor's personal line, not the business number, not the contact Marcus managed, but the number that fewer than a dozen people in the world possessed. The number Marco had known. Victor looked at the screen for 3 seconds before he answered. Put it on speaker without being asked, which Emma understood was for her benefit. He wanted her to hear, which meant he wanted her to know, which meant the door he'd cracked open in the garden that afternoon was still open. DeLuca. Breck's voice was unhurried, reasonable, the voice of a man at a table with all the cards, or a man who believed he was. I hear you've been busy. I've been busy for some time, Victor said. You're only noticing now. A pause. Let's talk about what you found. We're talking. Go ahead. Whatever your brother put together, it's incomplete. It's circumstantial. You know as well as you that a federal case built on a dead man's personal files goes nowhere without corroboration. Victor said nothing. Emma watched his face. It gave nothing. Here's what I'm offering, Breck continued. You sit on what you have. I sit on what I know about certain operations that carry your family's fingerprints from 15 years back. We call it even. We go back to our corners. A pause. And the boy stays safe. That's the main thing. The mention of Noah. Emma felt the air in the room change. Victor's voice, when it came, was quieter than before. Lower. The kind of quiet that wasn't calm. It was the opposite of calm, compressed into something very small and very still. Raymond, Victor said. You used my nephew's grief to lure him into a flood. You put a listening device in a civilian woman's apartment. You had my brother killed and spent 8 months letting me think it was an accident. He paused. And now you're offering me a deal. I'm offering you a practical solution. I submitted the archive to the FBI at 6:47 this evening, Victor said. Special Agent Diaz. She said to tell you she's been looking forward to this conversation. The silence on the other end lasted 4 full seconds. You're lying, Breck said. I'm not. You know I'm not. You can hear it. Another silence. Shorter this time. The recalculation happening in real time. You understand what happens now, Breck said. The reasonableness was gone from his voice. What was left was older and harder. I understand exactly what happens now, Victor said. And so do you. He ended the call. The kitchen was absolutely silent. Then Marcus from the doorway. You think he'll run? He'll try, Victor said. Which is why Diaz has a flight watch on him and 3 of his top associates already. He set the phone on the table. He's not running anywhere. Emma realized she'd been holding her breath. She let it out slowly. He knows it's over. He's known since before he called, Victor said. That call wasn't about making a deal. It was about seeing if I had any hesitation. He looked at the phone. He was testing whether I loved Noah enough to blink. And I love Noah enough not to, Victor said. The difference between the two things, loving someone enough to blink and loving someone enough not to sat in the room like the most important sentence of the night. Which it was. Noah woke up at midnight, disoriented, looking for his sketchbook that had slid between the couch cushions. Emma found him in the side room, half asleep, patting the cushions methodically. "It's here," she said, handing it to him. "You dropped it." I took it, held it against his chest, blinked at her in the dim light. "Is something happening?" he asked, not frightened. Alert the way he always was, older in his instincts than in his years. "Things are being handled," Emma said. "You're safe." "Uncle Victor. He's in the kitchen. He's fine." Noah looked at her for a moment. Then, "You're not going to leave, are you, after it's over?" Emma sat on the edge of the couch beside him. The question had a weight to it that she'd been carrying since that afternoon in the garden, since she'd told Victor she wasn't planning on going anywhere. "What makes you ask that?" she said. "Because everyone who comes here for a reason leaves when the reason is done," Noah said. Not bitterly, just factually, the way he said most things. The doctor, the lawyers, the men who work for Marcus. They come because they have to, and they leave because that's all there is. Emma looked at this boy. 6 years old, and already cataloging arrivals and departures with the precision of someone who had learned that the people who stayed were rare enough to count. "I came because you needed help," she said carefully. "And then some other things happened, and I stayed because of those things. And now," she paused, "and now I think maybe I stay for different reasons." Noah thought about this. "What reasons?" "You," she said, "and your uncle, and Rosa, who replaced my cold coffee so fast I didn't even see it happen." She looked at the sketchbook in his arms. "And because I've never had anyone ask me to stay before." "Not really." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then, "My dad used to say that home isn't a place. He said it was a collection of people." Emma felt the truth of it land somewhere deep. "Your dad sounds like he was very smart," she said. "He was," Noah said. "Uncle Victor says he was the smart one, and Uncle Victor was just the stubborn one." He paused. "But I think Uncle Victor is smart too. He just thinks differently." "He does think differently," Emma agreed. Noah yawned, settled back into the couch. "Emma." "Yeah. I'm glad you didn't keep walking," he said. "In the alley. I'm glad you turned around." She reached over and straightened his blanket. "Me too, Noah." He was asleep again in 4 minutes. Emma sat with him until she was sure. Then she went back to the kitchen where Victor was still at the table alone. Now Marcus and Rosa both gone to handle whatever Marcus and Rosa handled in the hours after the crisis had been converted from urgent to inevitable. She sat across from him. He looked at her. "He okay?" "He asked me if I was going to leave after it's over," she said. Victor's expression shifted. Something moved through it he didn't conceal. "What did you tell him?" he asked. "I told him I had reasons to stay," Emma said. "Different reasons than how I got here." The kitchen was quiet. The house around them had settled into the deep calm of the late hours, and outside the city of New Orleans was doing what it always did, living loudly and dying beautifully, and surviving itself one night at a time. "I owe you something," Victor said. "You don't?" "Not money," he said quickly. "Not that. I mean—" He stopped, reorganized. "I've been thinking about what you said. About Noah being in the garden alone. About the walls I built, and how he was still lonely enough to walk through them." He looked at the table. "I've been building things for 8 months. Security systems, staff structures, financial arrangements, everything except the thing that actually mattered." "Being there," Emma said. "Being there," he agreed. "Present. Not managing the situation, just present." Emma waited. "Marco used to call me on it," Victor said. "My brother. He used to say, 'Victor, you love people like a contractor. You build things to protect them, but you forget to be inside the house.'" He exhaled. I thought that was just Marco being poetic. It wasn't, Emma said. No, it wasn't. He looked at her. I'm going to change it. Not because you told me to, although you did tell me more clearly than anyone since Marco. Because I watched Noah sleep just now and realized I know he likes his toast dry and his books read 3 times before bed. But I don't know what he thinks about when he's quiet. I don't know what he dreams about. I don't know what he's afraid of beyond the obvious. He paused. That's not a guardian. That's a warden. Emma felt the honesty of it like something physical. You're not a warden, she said. You're a man who's been afraid for so long he confused protection with presence. Those aren't the same thing. No, Victor said. They aren't. What are you going to do about it? She asked. Because with him asking was more useful than reassuring. He looked at her with the steadiness that was becoming familiar. The thing about him that didn't flinch from direct questions that met them like a door swinging open instead of a wall going up. I'm going to be in the room, he said. I told you that this afternoon and I meant it. A pause. I'm going to learn what he dreams about. I'm going to plant the garden he keeps drawing pictures of. I'm going to read the books with him, not have Rosa tell me later what he thought of them. Emma looked at this man across a kitchen table at midnight. Powerful and exhausted and cracked open in the way that only real things cracked, not broken, but open. The way geodes were open. What was inside was harder and more brilliant than the outside suggested. Your brother would be proud of you, she said. Victor looked at her. His jaw worked for a moment. Don't say that. Why? Because I'll believe it, and then I'll have to live up to it. He said it without humor, which he meant it completely. Emma smiled, quietly without making a performance of it. Good, she said. That's exactly the point. The warrant came down 36 hours later. Emma heard about it from Rosa, who had heard it from Marcus, who had been in contact with Agent Diaz's office from 6 in the morning. Raymond Breck was taken into federal custody at his home at 7:42 a.m., along with 4 associates. 3 additional arrest warrants were in processing. The archive Marcus had transported through a carefully planned route to the field office the previous night had been verified, authenticated, and formally entered into evidence before 8 o'clock. Emma was standing in the garden with her coffee when Marcus came to tell her. He delivered the information with his characteristic economy, no drama, no embellishment, just the facts in the order they mattered. Is Victor? She started. In Noah's room, Marcus said. He was there when Noah woke up. Read him something from that book on the shelf, the one with the cracked spine. Emma felt something warm move through her chest. Which one? She asked. The one about the lighthouse keeper, Marcus said, slightly baffled by her interest in the detail. The boy's been asking for it apparently. For weeks. Nobody had the time. Emma looked at the garden. At the raised beds along the wall, the fig tree, the bench where Noah had been drawing the night, the whole world had started moving. Thank you, Marcus, she said. He nodded, went back inside. That was Marcus. Victor came down at 9 with Noah, who was carrying the lighthouse keeper book under his arm like a trophy. He sat across from Emma at the breakfast table and announced with tremendous satisfaction that they were going to plant tomatoes today, because his father had grown tomatoes and he'd found seeds in a drawer, and Uncle Victor had said yes. Emma looked at Victor over Noah's head. Victor looked back at her. I said yes, he confirmed. You don't know anything about growing tomatoes, Emma said. No, Victor agreed. Do you? A little. My mother had a pot on the fire escape. Noah looked at her with the intensity of a child who has just identified a key resource. You can teach us. Emma looked at the boy. At the seeds he'd produced from a small paper envelope and laid on the table with the seriousness of someone presenting evidence. At Victor, who was watching his nephew with the focused attention of a man rediscovering the person he'd been before everything got complicated. Okay, she said. But we need good soil and sun, and you have to be patient because they take time. Dad said the best things always take time, Noah said. Emma looked at Victor. Victor looked at Emma. Your dad was right, Victor said, and Noah, satisfied, began sorting seeds with the precision and joy of a child who had just decided the world was going to cooperate with him today. which for the first time in a long time it was. The call from Emma's landlord came at 10:15. She took it in the hallway, braced for the conversation she'd been postponing, the eviction timeline, the money. She didn't have the math that didn't work, no matter how many times she ran it. She came back to the garden 12 minutes later. Victor read her face immediately. "What happened?" "My landlord called to tell me the back rent has been paid," Emma said. 11 weeks, paid in full this morning, by a property management company I've never heard of. She looked at him. "A company I suspect doesn't exist." Victor was very still. "We talked about this," Emma said. "I said I hadn't agreed." "You said you were thinking about it," he said carefully. "Victor, you are the reason my nephew is alive," he said. "Not metaphorically, not approximately, literally and specifically. You turned around in an alley when every reasonable person would have kept walking, and that specific choice is the reason Noah is sitting in that garden right now sorting tomato seeds." He held her eyes. "The rent is not charity. It is the smallest possible acknowledgement of a debt that I can't actually repay." Emma stood in the hallway looking at this man. The anger she'd been ready to organize wouldn't quite form. Because the logic was real, and the honesty was real, and beneath both of them was something else. The simple fact that someone had looked at the shape of her life and decided it shouldn't stay the way it was. Not pity, not performance, just a man who fixed problems when he saw them and happened to have the means. "Next time you do something like that," she said, "you tell me first." "Yes," he said. "I mean it." "I know you do," he said, "which is why I'm agreeing." Emma exhaled. "The job too." A pause. "What about the job?" he asked with the particular careful precision of someone navigating a minefield. "Ray called this morning. Told me a new investor group acquired the building and is renovating the diner, and he's getting a full staff raise and new equipment." She tilted her head. "Investor group that appeared overnight." Victor looked at the ceiling briefly. "That one was Marcus's idea, actually." "Victor." The diner was struggling. It was a legitimate investment opportunity. The renovation creates 7 new jobs in the neighborhood. The economics are... Victor. He stopped. "Thank you," Emma said. He looked at her, slightly caught off guard. "I'm still annoyed," she clarified. "But thank you." "Both things can be true," he said. "They are," she said. Simultaneously, something passed between them in the quiet of the hallway. The understanding of two people who had been honest with each other through things that most people took years to navigate, arriving at the recognition that the honesty was the most valuable thing, more than the protection, more than the money, more than the whole complicated machinery of everything Victor DeLuca could deploy. The honesty was what had changed everything. "Emma," he said. She waited. "Stay." He said it simply, without dressing it up. Not because of Breck, not because of the danger which is over, not because of Noah, although he wants you here more than he'll say directly. He met her eyes. "Stay because I'd like you to. Because this house has had people in it who work for me, and people who are afraid of me, and people who love me out of history and obligation. And you are the first person who has told me the hard thing without a reason to manage me, without wanting anything from it." Emma looked at him. At the man who had run through floodwater for a child who had said I should have when he was wrong, who had been in Noah's room at dawn reading the lighthouse keeper book with the cracked spine, because a boy had been asking for weeks, and finally someone had the time. "I'm not staying in your house," she said. He absorbed this. Understood. "I'm staying in New Orleans," she said. "In my apartment, with my job at the diner, which is apparently being renovated by a suspiciously convenient investor group. And I'll come here for dinner sometimes, and to check on the tomatoes, and because Noah will absolutely guilt me into it with the sketchbook thing." She paused. "And for other reasons," she said, "that are still being determined." Victor looked at her for a long moment. The stillness in him wasn't the controlled professional stillness now. It was something warmer, something that had always been underneath, waiting for someone to make enough room for it. "That's enough," he said. "It's more than enough," Emma said. And from the garden right on cue, Noah's voice rose clear and impatient. "The seeds don't plant themselves. Are you two coming or not?" Emma laughed. Victor. For the first time since she'd known him openly without reserve, with his whole face involved, laughed too. And in the garden, a 6-year-old boy, who had spent a midnight storm alone in a flooded alley, who had lost his father and followed a stranger into the rain, looking for a door that wasn't there, looked up at the sound of both of them coming through the door, and smiled the way children smiled when the world briefly made the kind of sense they'd been hoping for. Like it was going to be okay. Like maybe it already was. The tomatoes did not go well. Noah had planted the seeds with the intensity of a surgeon pressing each one into the soil at what he'd calculated was the correct depth based on information he'd found in a book Rosa produced from somewhere in the house, a gardening manual so old its cover had separated from its spine. He'd watered them with the precision of someone who had been told twice not to overwater and was taking that instruction as a personal challenge. He'd marked each row with a small stick and a label written in his careful, blocky handwriting. And then he'd checked on them every morning for 9 days, and nothing had happened, and he was taking it personally. Emma said they take time. Victor told him on the 9th morning, standing in the garden with coffee, while Noah crouched over the soil with the focused displeasure of a scientist whose experiment was refusing to cooperate. She said patient people get results, Noah said. I've been patient. 9 days is not. It feels like longer, Noah said. Victor looked at the labeled rows, at the small sticks, at his nephew's handwriting on each mark, the letters slightly uneven in the way of a child still making peace with the mechanics of writing. He crouched down beside Noah. Your dad planted tomatoes every spring, Victor said, and every spring he'd stand out here on day 10, saying the same thing you're saying. Noah looked at him. Did they grow? Every time, Victor said. Eventually, they always came. Noah considered this, studying the soil. How long did he wait? Long enough to stop watching every day, Victor said. He said the trick was to go do something else and let them work without you. Noah stood up, brushed the dirt off his knees, looked at Victor with the measuring expression he used when he was deciding whether an adult was being straight with him or was deploying strategy. You're trying to get me to stop checking, Noah said. I'm trying to pass on your father's gardening wisdom, Victor said. Same thing. Yes, Victor admitted. It is. Noah almost smiled. Fine, I'll wait 2 more days. But then I'm getting Emma to come look at them. She knows more than you. She knows more than me about most things, Victor said, and meant it so plainly that Noah gave him a quick, surprised look, and then went inside for breakfast, without comment, which was Noah's way of saying he'd registered something important and needed time to process it privately. Victor stayed in the garden. He stayed there longer than he needed to, long enough to feel the morning move around him. The city waking up on the other side of the gate, the sounds of the house coming to life behind him, and he thought about his brother standing in this same garden in the spring, watching seeds he'd planted and couldn't stop checking on, and the specific patience that Marco had always had, that Victor had always envied, and never understood until now. You planted the thing. You did the work. And then you had to trust the process enough to step back and let it grow without you standing over it demanding results. Marco had been trying to teach him that his whole life. Victor just hadn't been listening in the right context before. Emma came on a Thursday, 3 weeks after the morning in the garden, carrying a bag from the hardware store that contained, among other things, a packet of fertilizer stakes that she'd been told by a man at the store were foolproof, and a new trowel, because Noah had lost the original one somewhere Victor hadn't been able to locate. She came through the gate the way she'd started doing, not waiting to be let in, not announcing herself with a call. First, just arriving, the way people arrived when a place had started to feel like somewhere they had the right to be. Rosa opened the front door before Emma reached it. They're in the kitchen, Rosa said. It's bad. Emma stopped. What's bad? Rosa stepped back and let her in. The kitchen smelled like burned sugar, and something that might once have been chocolate but had made a series of bad decisions along the way. Victor was standing at the counter with a mixing bowl and an expression that a man of his particular reputation should never have been wearing, somewhere between baffled concentration and a controlled refusal to admit defeat. Flour on his left sleeve. A smear of something brown on his jaw that he appeared to be entirely unaware of. Noah was at the table with his arms crossed, observing the proceedings with the solemn attention of a disaster investigator. Emma stood in the doorway and took the full picture in. "What is happening?" she said. "It's my birthday tomorrow," Noah announced. "Uncle Victor is making my cake." Emma looked at Victor. Victor looked at her. "I'm making his cake." "The recipe says fold," Noah said with the gravity of a witness delivering testimony. He stirred. "Folding and stirring are functionally." "They are not," Emma said. Victor pointed the spatula at her. "You're supposed to be on my side." "I'm on the cake side," Emma said. She set her bag down and crossed to the counter and looked into the mixing bowl. The batter inside was the color of something that had been through an experience. "How long have you been working on this? First attempt or second?" Noah called from the table. Emma looked at Victor. "The first one was a learning exercise," Victor said. "He put in salt instead of sugar," Noah said. "The containers look identical," Victor said with the careful, measured tone of a man constructing a defense. Emma pressed her lips together. She was absolutely not going to laugh. This was a matter of personal discipline. "Move over," she said. "I have it." "Victor, move over." He moved over. She picked up the bowl and evaluated the damage. Behind her, she could feel Noah's relief radiating from the table like heat. "It's salvageable," she said. "Barely. We need another egg and more cocoa powder. Where's your cocoa?" "Second cabinet," Rosa called from the other room, because Rosa always knew. Emma found the cocoa, turned back to find Victor standing exactly where she'd put him, watching her work with the specific focused attention he brought to things he was in the process of learning. Not watching to supervise, watching to understand. It was one of the things she'd come to recognize about him in 3 weeks of dinners and garden checks, and evenings that started as practical visits, and ended with the three of them at the table long after Rosa had gone to bed. "You could ask me," she said, "instead of studying me like I'm a document." "I learn more by watching," he said. "You also learn from asking." "What am I asking?" "How to fold," she said. She handed him the spatula. "Come here." He came to stand beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, the realness of him, this large and careful and perpetually precise man in a kitchen that smelled like his mistakes, about to be taught to fold batter by a waitress from Decatur Street. She put her hand over his on the spatula. "Under and over," she said. "Slow. You're not fighting it. You're convincing it." He was very still for a moment. Then he moved slowly the way she'd shown him under and over, and the batter began to come together the way batter was supposed to. "Like that?" he asked. "Like that," she said. She let go of his hand. Neither of them said anything. From the table, Noah watched this with the quiet intensity of a child who was paying very close attention and would be filing it away for future reference. "The tomatoes came up," he said, suddenly breaking the silence with the precision of someone who understood that sometimes you had to redirect the room. "This morning, 3 of them." Emma turned. Three. Noah confirmed, satisfied in the deep, complete way of someone whose faith had been vindicated after a long trial. "They're small, but they're there." Emma looked at Victor. Victor looked at Emma. "Your dad was right," Emma said. "He usually was," Victor said. The birthday cake was imperfect in the way that cakes were when they were made with genuine effort by people who were still learning slightly uneven layers, frosting, that was honest about being applied by someone doing it for the first time. Victor had insisted on doing the frosting himself after Emma fixed the batter, and the result was sincere, if not symmetrical. Noah looked at it for a long moment when they set it on the table. "It's the best cake I've ever seen," he said. "It's not," Emma started. "It's the best cake I've ever seen," Noah said again, with the finality of someone who was not making an aesthetic judgment, but a different kind of judgment entirely. "Because Uncle Victor made it." Victor was very still behind the cake. "We both made it," he said. "Emma fixed it." "Emma saved it," Noah corrected. "You started it. That's the important part." Emma looked at this child and felt something very large and quiet happen in her chest. The understanding that Noah was not talking only about cake. That Noah, with the precision he brought to everything he observed, had registered what mattered and named it clearly, the way he always did. Victor started it. That was the important part. The choosing to begin. The being in the kitchen flower on his sleeve, and wrong measurements behind him, trying in the specific, imperfect, earnest way of someone who had decided that trying was the thing. That was the part that mattered. "You're going to be very wise when you grow up," Emma told Noah. "Rosa says I'm already wise," Noah said. "She says I just need to get taller." Rosa from the kitchen doorway confirmed this without turning around. After dinner, after the cake, after Noah had been extracted from the table by Rosa, with promises of the Lighthouse Keeper book, and the specific firmness that Rosa deployed without apology, Victor and Emma ended up on the bench in the garden. The city was noisy around them, the way it always was at this hour, New Orleans in full voice, all music and history and complicated life. The garden held it at a manageable distance, not eliminated, just framed. "3 tomatoes," Emma said. "3," Victor confirmed. "Marco would have been smug about it," she said. "About being right. I was always right about the garden." Victor was quiet for a moment. He was right about most things. He just said them at the wrong volume. Marco was loud about the things that needed to be said quietly, and quiet about the things he should have shouted. He paused. "I'm the opposite. I speak quietly about everything which people sometimes mistake for wisdom. It's not wisdom. It's just control." Emma turned to look at him. And now, he met her eyes. "And now I'm trying to learn the difference between controlling things and trusting them." He looked at the garden. The tomatoes were a useful lesson. Emma smiled. "You paid $4 for fertilizer stakes and a life philosophy." "Cheapest thing I've bought in years," he said. She laughed, and he watched her laugh the way he watched things completely, with full attention, storing it. "I want to tell you something," he said. Emma settled. The directness in his voice was different from its usual register, not the professional tone, not the controlled delivery of information. Something more open-throated. "When Marcus came back from your apartment that night," Victor said, "with the device in the bag, I stood in the hallway for 30 seconds before I went upstairs to tell you. I was calculating how to present it, how to manage your reaction, how to give you the information in the way that would produce the most controlled outcome." He paused. "And then I knocked on your door, and you opened it in 12 seconds, still wearing your shoes, ready to move. And I thought, this woman doesn't need to be managed. She needs to be told the truth." Emma was quiet. "I've spent 20 years managing people," Victor said. "Managing situations, reducing variables. I got very good at it. And I forgot that you couldn't love someone and manage them at the same time. Marco used to say that too. Said it about me specifically." Emma heard the word. He hadn't tried to take it back or redirect around it. He'd said it the way he said things when he meant them plainly, without decoration. "Victor," she said. "I know," he said. "You don't have to say anything." "I was going to say that I know," she said. "I've known for a while. I was waiting for you to find the words." He looked at her. "You're not easy to read," she said. "But you're not impossible. I've been watching you for 3 weeks. The way you look at Noah when he's not looking back. The way you listened when I told you the hard things, instead of explaining why I was wrong. The way you were in that kitchen tonight, flower on your sleeve, refusing to give up on a cake that was already half ruined." She held his eyes. "I see you. The real version. Not the version the city talks about." "The version the city talks about is also real," he said. "Careful, honest." "I know that too," she said. "I'm not pretending you're someone you're not. I'm saying the person you're becoming, the one who's in the room who reads the Lighthouse Keeper book, who folds the batter and plants tomatoes and says, 'I should have,' when he's wrong. That person was always in there. You just needed a reason to let him out." Victor looked at her for a long moment. "Noah is the reason," he said. "Noah started it," Emma said. "But you were already changing before he woke up this morning, before the cake, before the garden." She paused. "You changed when you ran through that alley in the floodwater, and someone who didn't know you, yet saw your face." He was quiet. "I saw your face," Emma said. "When you found him. There was nothing controlled about it. Just love. terrified, complete, unmanaged love. She met his eyes. That's the man I stayed for. The garden was very still around them. Victor reached over and took her hand. Not dramatically, not tentatively. The way he did things when he'd made a decision completely without half measures. Emma let him. They sat like that on the bench under the fig tree, while New Orleans moved and breathed around them, and neither of them said anything for a while, because everything necessary had already been said. The next morning, Emma came back with Carol. This had not been planned. Carol had called at 7 a.m. to report that she'd heard the diner was under renovation, and she wanted to know if Emma was all right, and Emma had said she was, and Carol had said she wanted to see for herself, and Emma had said she was going to Victor's for Noah's birthday, and Carol had said she'd never met a genuine Mafia boss, and at 72, she wasn't going to start refusing opportunities like that. Emma had tried to explain that Victor was, "I'll bring cookies," Carol said. "The peanut butter ones. Children always like those." Emma had given up. Victor opened the gate himself when they arrived. He looked at Carol. Carol looked at him. She was 72, 5 feet 1 inch, wearing a yellow cardigan and carrying a container of peanut butter cookies, and she looked at Victor DeLuca with the expression of a woman who had decided in advance that she was not going to be impressed and was immediately revising that position without any indication she'd done so. "You're taller than I expected," Carol said. "I hear that," Victor said. "Emma talks about you," Carol said. "She thinks she doesn't, but she does." "Carol," Emma said. "I'm 72, Carol said. "I've earned the right." She held out the cookies. "For the boy." Victor took them. "Thank you." "He's 7 today." "Today." 7, Victor confirmed. "7 is a good age," Carol said. "They're still young enough to believe in things." She looked at Victor steadily. This small woman in a yellow cardigan, with the composure of someone who had outlasted most of the things that had tried to intimidate her over 7 decades. "You take care of her." Victor held her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." Carol nodded once satisfied and went inside to find Noah, because Carol always moved toward the thing that needed her most, and a 7-year-old boy on his birthday clearly qualified. Emma looked at Victor. "She's magnificent," he said. "She terrifies most people," Emma said. "Most people haven't run a criminal organization for 20 years, Victor said. "Relative to that, a 72-year-old in a yellow cardigan is—" He paused. "Still terrifying, actually." Emma laughed. Noah's birthday was the loudest the house had been in 8 months. Carol talked to Rosa for 45 minutes in the kitchen, and they found between them a combined vocabulary of 6 shared words and communicated everything they needed to, anyway, which Emma observed with the helpless affection of someone watching 2 forces of nature discover a mutual frequency. Marcus appeared at noon with a gift for Noah, a book about navigation and maps, and sat at the table with the uncertain posture of a man who was very good at a specific set of things and was encountering a situation outside all of them. Noah opened the navigation book and immediately appointed Marcus his co-researcher. Marcus looked at Emma with an expression that said he had not anticipated this assignment and was not sure how to decline it. Emma smiled at him with the smile of someone who was not going to help. Victor watched all of it from the edge of the room, the way he'd watched things before, cataloging, measuring. But it was different now. Emma could see the difference. He wasn't watching to manage it. He was watching because he wanted to remember it, because he understood finally that this was the thing worth cataloging. Not the threats or the strategies or the information in locked archive boxes. This. The kitchen full of noise. The birthday cake slightly lopsided on the counter. Carol telling Rosa about her late husband with gestures that transcended language. Marcus failing to decline the role of map co-researcher. Noah in the middle of it all. 7 years old today, alive and safe, and completely at home in his own life, in a way that 3 weeks ago had not been guaranteed. Victor caught Emma watching him watch all of it. He didn't look away. She crossed the room and stood beside him at the edge of the kitchen shoulder to shoulder, and for a moment they were just 2 people watching the life that had assembled itself around them with the particular improbability of things that weren't planned but turned out to be exactly right. "Your brother would have loved this," Emma said quietly. "He would have been insufferable about it," Victor said. He would have taken credit for the whole thing. He kind of deserves it, Emma said. He built the key. He trusted Noah with it. He knew you'd find your way to the right moment. Victor looked at Noah across the room, his nephew, his brother's son, the child who had walked into a storm looking for a door that wasn't there and had led 3 adults to doors they hadn't known were available to them. Marco always said, Victor stopped, started again. He always said that the thing about a closed door was that it only looked closed from one side, that from the other side it looked like home. Emma was quiet for a moment. Which side are you on now? She asked. Victor looked at the kitchen, at Noah and Carol and Rosa and Marcus, and the lopsided birthday cake, and the cookies, and the noise, and the life of it all. Unmanaged and uncontrolled and real, in a way that nothing he'd built with money or strategy had ever been. The right one, he said, for the first time. Later, after the dishes and the candles, and Noah's 7-minute explanation of the navigational principles he'd already extracted from Marcus's book, after Carol had been driven home by a driver she charmed into stopping for beignets on the way, after Rosa had declared the evening complete with the authority of someone who was always right about when things were done, Emma stood at the front gate, ready to leave, the way she always left, going back to her apartment, her diner, her life, that was her own, and that she was not giving up for anything. Victor stood with her. Same time Thursday, Emma said. Noah will expect you, Victor said. He's going to want to show you what happened with the tomatoes. All 3 of them. He counted this morning, 4 now. Emma smiled. He's not supposed to be checking every day. He's 7, Victor said. He checked. She picked up her bag. He was looking at her the way he'd looked at her across the kitchen earlier, the full version, not the managed version, the real one. I'm not going to stop going back to my apartment, she said. I know. And I'm not going to stop having opinions about things you do without asking me first. I expect nothing less, he said. And I'm going to keep telling you the hard things, she said. When you need to hear them. I'm counting on it, he said. It's the only thing that makes me better. Emma looked at him. At this man she had called in a flooded alley because a child needed help. This man who had run toward a 6-year-old in the dark. This man who had said I should have and meant it, who had put flour on his sleeve trying to make a birthday cake, who had crouched in a garden and talked to seeds, and found in the space of 3 weeks the version of himself that had always been underneath the walls. Good night, Victor, she said. Good night, Emma, he said. She walked through the gate. He stayed at the entrance, and she knew without turning that he watched until she was in the car, and the car was moving, because that was who he was, someone who did not stop watching until the thing he was protecting was safe. She didn't turn around, but she smiled. 3 months later. Agent Diaz called Victor to report that the federal case against Raymond Breck had produced 17 indictments, 4 guilty pleas, and the complete dismantling of an operation that had run undisturbed through 3 administrations. She said Marco DeLuca's documentation had been described by the lead prosecutor as the most meticulous and comprehensive private evidence package she had seen in her career. Victor thanked her. Hung up. Sat in his office for 5 minutes alone with his brother. Then he went out to the garden where Noah was at the raised beds counting tomatoes 12, now small and green and stubbornly working their way toward red, and Emma was on the bench with her coffee watching Noah count and pretending not to keep track herself. 12, Noah announced. I counted twice. Definitely 12. Your dad would say you need to stop checking, Victor said. My dad grew 12 tomatoes his first year, Noah said. I looked it up. We're on track. Victor sat down on the bench beside Emma. Diaz called, he said. Emma looked at him. And, it's done, he said. All of it. Emma held his eyes for a moment. All the weight of those 2 words. All the months, and the loss, and the storm, and the alley, and the flooded 6 inches of water, and a child holding a crumpled piece of paper. All of it. Done. Marco did it, she said. Marco did it, Victor agreed. Noah looked up from the tomato beds. He had heard. He didn't say anything. He just looked at Victor for a moment with those dark, watchful, ancient in a child's face eyes, and then he nodded once, small and complete, and went back to his tomatoes. Emma put her hand over Victor's on the bench. He turned his hand over and held it. The garden was warm. The city moved around them. The tomatoes were 12 now and growing. And the house behind them, this house that had been built with walls and cameras and money, and every instrument of protection, except the one that mattered most, was finally full of the thing it had always needed. Not guards, not strategy, not control. People who chose to stay. And in the end, that was the only thing that had ever made any house into a home. Not the walls, not the gates, not the money stacked against every possible loss, but the simple, extraordinary, irreversible act of one person turning toward another in a storm and saying, "I'm not leaving. I'm right here." Emma Carter had turned around in a flooded alley for a boy she didn't know, and in doing so, she had walked every one of them home.